So Shamin, you were telling me that when you're really anxious, for example, when you're talking with a stranger or somebody you know just a little bit, that there's a number of concerns that go through your mind about how you will appear and how you will act. Could you review for me what those concerns, those fears are?
Yeah. One is that I'm going to sound stupid or not have the right thing to say. Um, I also am worried that they'll be able to tell that I'm nervous um, because of some like sweating. Um, yeah, that's basically it.
That you're going to be really nervous, you won't have things to say, that you'll be really sweaty.
Yeah.
Okay, and how would people know that you're nervous, by the way? Well, you mentioned sweaty. Are there any additional ways?
My voice gets kind of shaky when I talk, when I'm nervous, and um, I my hands can shake a lot. So I always think that they're looking at my hands shaking. And yeah, the sweatiness has always been there, but it as I get older, I start to feel like I can smell it. And so I'm worried that people will be able to smell that I'm sweating.
Okay. And what do you do to try to prevent these fears from coming true?
Um, well, I try to leave the conversation as soon as possible.
Okay.
Um, and if I am stuck in a conversation, I ask a lot of questions so I don't have to have the answers. And I try to talk as little as possible so people can't hear my voice shaking. Um, and I often clasp my hands, or I um I cross my arms. Um, and I might stand a little bit further back from somebody if I'm worried about them smelling me.
Okay. And while you're doing all this in a conversation that you're really uncomfortable feeling during, what are you paying attention to? What are you focused on?
Um, I'm focused on my hands,
Uh-huh.
whether they're shaking a lot or whether someone is looking at them. I can tell that I'm shaking. I'm paying attention to whether or not my underarms are getting wet or smelling. So if I start to feel hot, then all I'm paying attention to is whether I'm sweating or not. And um, I'm trying to think of like questions, what to ask, so that I don't have to answer any questions or say anything.
Okay. Okay.
And my voice too.
What about your voice?
If my voice is shaking or not, or if I'm stumbling over my words.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. You did a really good job describing how difficult this is for you, the various symptoms, the various fears you have, and what I call your safety seeking behaviors, the things that you do in an effort to try to prevent your fears from coming true. So I have an idea for a first experiment for us to do together. We're going to be doing many experiments together, and experiments are things that we do that are aimed at being learning experiences. So no matter how they go, they're successful because we'll learn something from it. And based on what you learn, we'll develop some sort of strategy that will help you make further progress toward your goal. And
Okay.
what I'm going to suggest for us to try as a first experiment together is that we have a conversation about some sort of social topic, something that you choose. I'm not a complete stranger, but you don't know me well yet. So it'll be good practice in talking to somebody that you don't know well. And during the conversation, I'm going to ask you to rely on all the usual safety-seeking behaviors that you just described to me. In other words, that you're going to talk less, and ask a lot of questions, that you're going to keep your arms clasped or folded together to try to hide the shaking. Uh, Normally, you would want to end the conversation early, but I'm going to suggest that we can continue this conversation for about 5 minutes so that you can experience it and learn more from it. Would that be okay with you?
Okay, 5 minutes is a long time, but
Yeah.
I can try.
Okay, okay. And there's one other thing that I'm going to suggest that you do, which is keep your attention focused during our conversation, just like it would be in a conversation with a stranger, an acquaintance elsewhere. In other words, focus on your anxiety symptoms, on how you're feeling in your body, your hands, whether or not you're sweaty. Focus on what are you going to say next, trying to figure that out. Keep your attention focused on all those things internally that you would normally be focused on.
Okay.
Okay, now let me ask you to make some predictions. During our conversation, how nervous do you imagine you will feel on a scale of 0 to 100, where 100 is the most intensely nervous you've ever felt, 50 is moderate, and 0 is completely calm? How nervous do you expect to feel?
Well, I'm already feeling really nervous about it, and we
Okay,
haven't even started, so I'm gonna say 100.
okay, 100. How much do you imagine you're going to trip over your words on a scale of 0 to 100?
I always trip over my words, so I'm gonna say 95.
Okay, 95. I'm writing all these down. How much do you predict that your voice will be shaky?
They usually go together, so when I start to trip over my words, my voice starts to get shaky, so I'm gonna say a 90.
Okay, 90. And how sweaty do you predict you will be?
Um, maybe an 80.
80. And how much do you think your hands will be shaking on the same scale?
They shake a lot. 90.
90. Okay, so I have all this written down. So let's have a conversation about a topic that you choose. It could be anything, I don't know, pets or vacations, or what do you think?
I like plants.
Oh, I can see that. You have a beautiful plant behind you. Okay, let's talk about plants. I like plants too. And remember, during this conversation, this is really important. Keep your attention focused on what you would normally be focused on when you're anxious. In other words, focus your attention on your anxiety symptoms themselves, how you feel in your body, on your, and use your safety seeking behaviors, to try to hide your anxiety and to try to come across better. Okay.
Okay.
Well, Shaman, I notice you have this beautiful plant behind you. What is that called? I've seen those before, but I don't know what it's called.
It's called a Monstera deliciosa, I think. I see you have plants too. What kind of plants do you have?
Well, I have lots of plants, but I don't know the Latin names of, actually, I don't know the common names of them. I just buy them because I think they're nice looking and hope that they do well, but I've killed a lot. But yours seems to be doing well. You must know what you're doing.
I don't really know. How long have you had plants?
Well, probably since college, I guess. Yeah, I mean, not the same plants because they keep dying on me, but I've had some plants for a long time. Have you been interested in plants for much of your life?
No, I just started getting into plants during COVID. What about how many plants have you had over the years?
Okay, note to viewer, in an actual session, this conversation would go on for about 5 minutes. Well, Shamin, congratulations. We had a conversation for over 5 minutes about a topic that you and I haven't talked about before, plants. And it's, you know, you're practicing talking to an acquaintance, someone you don't know well yet. Congratulations. How did you feel during this conversation?
Um, Pretty bad, pretty nervous, and awkward,
Yeah.
and uncomfortable.
And how do you feel the conversation went?
Pretty bad. Not
Really?
very good. Not very
Okay.
good.
Well, let me ask you more detailed questions about that, and I'll write down your notes. So on a scale of 0 to 100, how nervous were you during this conversation?
I was 100.
A
You
100.
asked me a hobby or something, or you asked me something that I wanted to talk about, and I said my plants, and then I almost regretted it immediately because I saw your plants in the background.
Okay. And that made you nervous. Why?
Because you probably know more about plants than I do, and I'm just learning. So I thought I was gonna sound stupid.
Okay. And one of your fears is that you would trip over your words. 0 to 100, how much did you trip over your words?
95, 90, 90, somewhere around there, a lot.
Okay. Okay. So I'll call that 93. And how about your voice shaking? How much was that a problem for you during this conversation?
I felt like it was shaking the whole time. I'm gonna say 90.
Okay. And how sweaty did you feel? 0 to 100.
I definitely started feeling sweaty. Um, 80.
Okay. Okay. And lastly, how much was handshaking a problem for you, 0 to 100?
Um, they were shaking. I'm gonna say 80.
Okay, very good. So when I look at these numbers, your predictions of how you would feel in different ways were pretty much the same within a few points of how you actually ended up feeling during this conversation. Now I'm going to suggest that we try to have a second conversation. It could be on the same topic or a different one, your choice. But this time, as an experiment, I'm going to suggest that you try dropping these safety seeking behaviors. First and foremost, that means get absorbed in the conversation, get mentally engrossed in what you and I are both saying, and treat whatever feelings and symptoms and thoughts and concerns that are going on in your mind and body, treat it like background noise, something you're aware of, but you're not focusing your attention on. Or whenever your attention slips onto one of your symptoms or your anxious thoughts, just return your attention right back to the conversation in the moment.
Okay.
So in other words, rather than focus internally, focus externally, get lost, mentally lost in the conversation.
Okay.
The other thing is try to drop the other safety seeking behavior. So rather than asking lots of questions or cutting yourself short when you're speaking, just say whatever's on your mind, no matter how long it is, and just say whatever comes to mind rather than think it ahead of time. And rather than try to hide your hands shaking, just ignore your hands and arms and just focus on the conversation instead. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So would you like to continue the conversation about plants or would you like to use a different topic?
Let's keep the plant talk going.
Okay, very good. So you were telling me that you live in a house and you have an outdoor area. Do you do any outdoor gardening or all your plants inside?
No, I actually started gardening in Brooklyn during COVID, at the beginning of COVID in 2020. So I decided I wanted to try gardening then, and I had a rooftop garden, and it was a lot of fun. It was the first time I didn't kill everything.
Really?
And yeah, I was able to grow vegetables and flowers and strawberries, and yeah, it was exciting to grow my own food. What about you?
Wow. Well, I do enjoy outdoor gardening. I mainly do flowers. Note to viewer, in an actual session, this would last for about 5 minutes. Congratulations again, Shaman. We did another 5-minute conversation. How do you feel now?
A little bit better.
Yeah, how do you feel this conversation went?
It was a little bit better. I was still nervous. And I still had moments where I felt awkward and was worried about what you were thinking or if I sounded stupid. But then I um, think I was able to get back into what we were talking about. And so it was nice to be able to talk about my plants and not be so focused on what you were thinking.
Okay. And in the special instructions for this second conversation was to focus your attention as much as possible on the conversation itself, to try to get engrossed or lost in the conversation rather than focus internally on your symptoms, your feelings, your concerns. How well were you able to do that?
I think I did better. It's hard because I've been doing it for so long to not pay attention to what I'm saying or how I'm saying it. And so sometimes I would trip up, but mostly I think I did a better job at being able to get lost in the conversation.
Okay, great. And then how about the other safety seeking behaviors? I asked you to try to drop them, to not, try to ask a lot of questions or think about what to say next or cut yourself short or hide your hands from shaking. How do you feel you did on those, dropping those behaviors?
A little bit better. I would feel myself tensing up and grabbing my hands, but then I would let go of them. Um, and I didn't feel as hot as I did in the last conversation. So I don't think I was as focused on how sweaty I was.
Okay, excellent. Congratulations. Now let me ask you more detailed questions to get your ratings here and see how they compare with previous ratings. So 0 to 100, how nervous were you during this second conversation?
I was still nervous, but I was less nervous. So maybe a 70.
Okay, 70. And how much were you tripping over your words during the second conversation?
I know that I got lost a couple of times. I got stuck and was back in my mind a couple of times, but um, maybe a 65.
Okay. And how much was your voice shaking in the second conversation?
Yeah, it was still shaky, but maybe a 70. It was
Okay.
a little bit better.
Okay. And how sweaty did you feel during this second conversation?
Oh, I felt really sweaty the first time. The second time I didn't notice I was sweating as much. So maybe 50.
50. Okay. And how much was handshaking a problem for you in this second conversation?
Um, they were shaking, but I I think they were better. Maybe a 70.
Okay. Well, as you look at these numbers, your predicted anxiety was 100. And in the first conversation, that's what you felt, but it went down to 70. You predicted you would trip over your words 95, which was about what you felt you did in the first conversation, but that went down to 65. You predicted that your voice would be shaking about 90, which is how you felt in the first conversation, but that improved to 70. You predicted you would be 80% sweaty, and that's how you felt in the first conversation, but that went down to 50. And lastly, you predicted that your hands would be shaking about 90. You felt that they actually shook in the first conversation about 80, but improved to about 70 in the second conversation. So when you look at all these numbers, rating the two different conversations and your predictions before the first conversation, I'm wondering what you think we can learn from these two experiments.
Um, well, what I noticed is that um, the stuff that I'm doing maybe isn't helping me as much as I thought it was. Um, so maybe that's something that is that right?
Whatever you learn is right. And so I just want to get a little more detail. The stuff that you were doing isn't helping you so much. What kind of stuff?
Holding my hands really tight, I think makes me pay attention to the shaking more. Um, so that doesn't help me so much. I was shaking less when I wasn't holding my hands together. Um, Asking questions, um, trying to have the right question makes me miss out on what's actually being said in the conversation. And so then I get worried that I'm asking a stupid question or that you already answered the question because I wasn't paying attention. So that didn't really help me. Um, and when I was talking about something that I enjoyed, that made me feel happy. So maybe not talking as much doesn't help me either, makes me feel worse, or um, like I'm contributing less, so it makes me feel stupid.
Wow, those are all important learning points. And how about focusing attention? In the first conversation, your attention was focused pretty internally on your symptoms, your concerns, on figuring out what to say next. Whereas in the second conversation, you were attempting to be more focused externally, getting engrossed mentally in the conversation. Did that make much of a difference?
Yeah, I think it made a big difference. The When I'm focused on what's happening internally, then I feel disconnected. But when I was able to get lost in the conversation and focus more on what was happening in the conversation, and not on myself or my symptoms, I felt like I was able to um, engage more in the conversation.
Very good. Congratulations. These were two really useful experiments in my view, because there is a lot that you learn that relying on your safety seeking behaviors rather than helping you ends up making you more anxious, more self-conscious, and hurts the flow of the conversation, hurts your participation in the conversation. Whereas getting mentally engrossed in the conversation and dropping your safety behaviors actually helps you feel better and helps your part of the conversation go better. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I'm going to suggest that you practice this as homework, if that's okay with you, that every day that you find yourself in a conversation, whether it's with somebody that triggers your anxiety or someone that you're comfortable with or something in between, that you try to get lost in the conversation, get mentally engrossed in the conversation, drop your safety behaviors as much as you can, and just see how that goes for you as a series of homework experiments, just like we did a couple experiments here. How does that sound?
Okay, I can try.
Well, congratulations. These were very, very successful experiments. You learned a lot. We learned a lot that will help you make further progress.
Thank you.